I'm Dan Drake. This is Front Up on Visitor Network TV and Channel 99. This is one of a series of interviews we're doing with candidates for the contested elections in the town of Nantucket election cycle that's happening in... Election cycle, that's a terrible phrase.
Yeah.
The elections that are happening in April. And our guest today is Cliff Williams, who is a candidate for the Board of Selectmen. Cliff, welcome. Nice to have you.
Thanks for having me. Again.
You're running again.
Again.
Why?
I've run because I was interested in running. It's been, 4 years I've tried continuously to get on the Board of Selectmen. Obviously, it started with the airport, my concerns there, and then after getting on the Finance Committee, just learn how the town works, how the money works, how government works. I've just continued to try again.
Has your attitude about the town government changed since you started?
Well, when I first got here, there was a lot of financial things that I don't think we had running so well. I think we've straightened out a lot of the philosophies with enterprise funds, and I think our finance department's finally on the right track, and I think we're in good fiscal condition, and hopefully we can continue with that. And the different philosophies like Capital Program Committee and how we're going to try to not just look forward for the capital projects, but then also try to develop a funding method for the projects, things like that.
The town's total budget is what now? About 120 million when you put the enterprise funds and everything else in there?
Yeah, I believe we collect now we're collecting like $82 million in property tax, and then the school also gets more money than what it shows on the budget.
The airport is separate from that, and the water company is separate from that. So it's pretty. I think it's pretty close to 125 million. Even with the improvements in the finance department and in the processes that have occurred in the last few months, do you think the system is able to manage it? I've asked you this question in different forms before, but is the system of government we now have able to react and deal with that volume of fiscal management and control? And this question extends to other areas too, but let's start with I
think I can answer that. I mean, you find out once you get into government is you don't get to do just what you want to do. And we seem to be the only form of government that seems to be accountable, where the federal government doesn't seem to be too accountable, then the state, and then we're the department.
But we're not accountable to ourselves.
Well, but the Department of Revenue sits there and puts their thumb on us.
We're accountable to the state, though, more than to ourselves.
Right, and makes us do what, follow a schedule and follow a calendar, and when it comes to revenues, what you can spend, what you can't spend, what kind of reserve, we could make things easier on us with different accounts where we start these reserve funds where like the fuel reserve where you're able to keep the money in there so it doesn't always fall back into the general fund and the free cash, and you can better manage your money. But that's all a form of government because it's not just my money or your money, it's everybody's money, so it's expensive to run an operation if you're not
it is expensive. But it also means you have to be more on top of. And I guess that was my question.
Right, and I think I've found, I guess I was trying to make the point that you'd think we'd be able to just do what we want, but we have to send these home rule petitions up to say, we'd like to do this because it's better, it's more efficient, it's cheaper. I mean, the Department of Revenue came down and seemed to be open to a lot of ideas, but then that's not really the feedback I get when, say, town administration actually calls and says we want to do something. So I don't know.
Yeah, when you get down to the specifics, it seems to be less flexible, and flexible or cooperative, however you want to put it.
There you go.
What are some of the other issues besides the financial that you see facing the town now?
Well, it's always about money in the end, even though.
Well, let's assume there were no caps on what you could spend, or at least larger caps than there are now.
Well, we're dealing with all the issues that we started dealing with them where we've been kicking the can down the road for so many years, where we had to improve our water, the water towers, the sewer projects, the different stages of the sewer. And now we're faced with same thing, sewer in Matticat. I think that's the next big thing that's coming forward. And I guess maybe the disappointing part financially is when the school just gave their presentation when the new superintendent, I get confused between principals and superintendents because I used to avoid them, but he took the job, he thought he wouldn't have to build a new school. And as a result of this
Population
huge,
grade.
yeah, whether it's a situation where it's legal or illegal or whatever it is, we just have to, another unfunded mandate by the federal government. So I made a point that if we've had this big influx of immigration, do you think we could maybe go to the federal government and maybe they could help us build a school more than they usually normally do? So,
and what's the
well,
answer?
you know what the answer to that was. I think everybody thinks talking to the federal government or talking to your senators some pipe dream. I mean, they're employees for you, and you elect them, and I don't.
There, I think, is going to be a debate if and when it is decided that those sewers, either there or in the main harbor watershed areas, sewers there have to be extended. There's going to be a large and loud debate about how those sewers are supposed to be paid for.
Exactly. And we talked about that again. That came up at the Finance Committee meeting last night. Because we've had this sewer work group, but we've had it for
many moons.
Decades. I don't say decades, but say 7 or 8 years. Yet we've still haven't come up with an answer or a philosophy of how to pay. And when we extended the sewer plant, expanded it, we started this 1/3, 1/3 program, which doesn't.
Some of us didn't believe would work in the first place.
Right.
And the math wasn't right.
Right. So then we're still faced with that, but and now we've got the Richmond group talking about putting, I don't know how many hundreds of houses in, and there's a lot of sewer lots or parcels that are going into and that's what we were why it came up last night. It also came up about, I guess the main reason was who's paying for the pipes, because you say you have your houses 2 miles away, now you're in the sewer district, but the sewer pipe doesn't run by your house. So now who pays for the pipe to go to your house?
Well, I think there's even a more fundamental question about who pays for the pipe that runs up to the point where the pipe to your house comes from, in the sense that if you're doing it, such as the water when it went out to Matticat, it went out to a certain point and then beyond that. But the water company paid for it out to that point. But I think there's a debate on who should pay even for that trunk line, if you will, out to.
So you almost like a new user fee, something like that.
Well, I mean, I happen to think that this is about you, not me, but I happen to think that the town paid for all the sewers 100 years ago when they were first put in, and it made Nantucket the place it is.
Right.
And I feel fairly strongly that the town should pay, and if it takes an override and whatever, the taxpayers as a whole should pay for the basic sewer system.
Right, and that goes back to the whole 1/3, 1/3 project. I believe any large capital project should be paid for by the levy, by the tax, property taxes, which we do for schools. I wouldn't say you don't have a child in school anymore, so why should you pay for the school? I mean, that's the same mentality that 1/3 thing came from for the sewer, which is, I think, not smart, because now you're putting a burden upon. Maybe some people can afford to do that, but maybe a lot of people can't afford to do that. That's why you put large capital projects on the tax roll to begin with.
What should some of the selectmen's other priorities be?
I don't know. That's the thing about this town. We have an airport. We have a marine department. We have sewers. It just seems like unlike small towns, we have so many priorities. We have so many diverse departments. It's hard to figure. Like I just mentioned with the school, all of a sudden we thought we had the school under control in a sense, and all of a sudden we need a new school. So it's almost like, and that's why we talk about the capital program committee coming up with that long-term list of projects. Even if we don't know how to fund them yet. At least they're on the list. At least we know they're out there, and we can anticipate. It's not just a surprise all the time that all of a sudden we need,
Right.
you know.
But I was thinking again, not in terms of money, and you say everything comes back to money, and of course it does. But in terms of, I mean, is it the harbors? Is it the housing? Is it other issues like that? What are the ones that the selectmen should be giving their attention to?
Well, housing is a huge issue. I mean, I think we've got the
That's
harbor.
the other side of the Paston proposal, the Richmond proposal to build 60 houses,
Right,
which
and-
need sewer, capacity.
Right, and what kind of housing do we build? Do we build single family dwellings that occupy a half an acre, or do we do more of a cluster housing? They call them condexes, I think, where maybe almost like the Quinn Village, where there's 4 condo houses, multi-level houses, all connected, so that you can utilize the piece of land better versus
Or apartments.
There you go. And there's a lot of that. We talk to different people about the housing, where some people just they don't want to live with someone else, but they don't want to live in a big house. They'll rent a little studio, a little studio apartment or a flat, whatever you want to refer to it as. So I think what, even though, talking to different people, Jim Kelly was talking about the hospital, how they need to get more housing, and the same thing where if somebody just wants a single apartment. It almost seems like we've got this, I think, the article where we're going to allow more dwellings within a dwelling, or a third dwelling on your property.
But that's...
And it also becomes an issue of overbuilding and something you don't want to see, but maybe zoned in certain areas where they already have maybe densely populated building. I don't know.
Or even not. Maybe, I mean, it's obviously unpopular and not in my backyard-ish, but, maybe there are places, or maybe the land bank has some land, or maybe, there is land that could be used for more dense housing.
Right.
That doesn't get into all the problems of sort of single-family landlords and single-family dwellings. And
I pointed out, as you come onto Popus Road, Maud Dismore, her husband used to own those
cottages.
Those little cottages. Right. And those are, I mean, it's almost like a cluster but they're single, standalone dwellings, but they're just 1 or 2 little bedroom cottages.
Cliff, one of the things that is interesting about this election is that there are only 2 contested races. The selectman's race and the land bank race. And all of the others, there's no opposition to the incumbent, or I think in one case there may be a new candidate with no opposition. And in a couple of cases there aren't candidates for vacancies.
Right.
To what do you ascribe that?
Well, for instance, I know the selectmen, obviously, it's a great deal of time, but something like the HDC, where, depending on the economy, I went through it 6 months ago, they're going to meetings sometimes 2-3 days a week for 5 hours or something crazy. So I think it's probably the commitment by a lot of people that just don't have the time, and running for office. A lot of times people don't, and that's why we passed the HTC article about appointing some people, because people would like to be on some of these boards but don't want to run, don't want to go through a campaign.
Right.
Which is an argument from people that say, well, then they shouldn't be on the board if they don't want to run for a campaign. But anyhow.
Well, I wouldn't have run for airport commission, that's for sure.
There you go. There's an example.
But the time, you mentioned the time commitment that's involved with these, and with the Board of Selectmen too, is significant.
Yeah.
And, there's an adage that you get what you pay for. And I think probably get more than what we pay for in terms of the Board of Selectmen. But do you think they should be paid more than they are? Do you think, or they should be reorganized so there are fewer of them perhaps and paid more?
Someone asked me that question probably a couple of years ago, and this is how pathetic I spend my time. I was going through the minutes of selectmen meetings back in 1929 because I was looking for information on the airport, and they paid the selectmen back then something like $400 a year, but I think my grandfather told me he only made $20 a week, so I had done the math at the time, but if you equate $400, I don't know what he made, to do the math again, he probably made $3,000 a year, but $400 was quite a bit of money compared to the $3,000 or whatever they pay selectmen now. Right. Yeah. It'd be more equated to maybe $15,000. I don't know, $20,000.
You think they could get more people to run if they paid more, or is it a question of changing the mix of the responsibilities?
I don't know if it's pay so much. I don't think most people get involved because they get paid, because nobody seems to. The responsibilities, we've given Libby more power in the last, 10 years, where she makes more decisions instead of the selectmen. Yes, it seems like you could shorten some of these meetings and take some of that responsibility and put it more on administration, I guess, would be helpful. But like I said, we have such a diverse community and so many different businesses, if you want to call them that, water company, airport, that I think we're kind of unique, where it's just, even with the enterprise funds and their boards, it's still a lot of work.
Well, there's an oversight aspect to it.
Right.
One last question. Sorry, Gino, I just lost my train of thought.
Okay.
I'll get it back in a second.
That's all right.
One last question, Cliff. The people run for the Board of Selectmen very often with fire in their eyes and some thoughts about how they can, what they want to do and how they can do it as a selectman. And very often they're hit with the reality, I think, that it doesn't work that way.
Right.
Do you have a thought on that?
Well, like we've talked about even here, is a lot of people come into it thinking it's a business, so they can run it like a business, and obviously you find out real quickly that you can't run it like a business. And I think obviously I've spent 5 years now in government and finding out how it works, and so I guess I'm not going to come in with that high hopes of changing the world overnight.
So why do you want to do it?
Well, because I just think there's issues, different issues that we haven't talked about. One of the largest ones is the landfill, or what we're going to do with the landfill, whether we're going to be able to get rid of that hill through gasification or some crazy, I shouldn't say it's crazy, philosophy. Whether when it's over, the contract's over, should we bring in contractors, or contractors willing to come in and we start just taking this trash off the island? So I think the landfill's, I think, one of my, even though we have a lot of problems, the landfill's due to start having some sort of debate about.
Good. Well, Cliff, best of luck to you. Cliff Williams, candidate for Board of Selectmen. Thank you.
Thank you.